Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing, a really systematic, ancient guide for how to achieve inner freedom.
We're going to be exploring a kind of roadmap for the mind. And it comes from the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. It's a classic Buddhist text that, you'll see, offers a surprisingly logical and structured approach to changing your mind and finding liberation.
So here's our game plan. We're going to follow a 6-part journey, kicking off with the basic problem we all face, and then moving step by step through how to build insight, see the results, and, hopefully, get to a place of real completion.
Okay, so first things first. Before we jump into the how, the text starts with the why. Like, why do we even need a path in the first place? And it starts by pointing out this core dilemma we're all stuck in.
According to this text, the untrained mind is caught in this wild contradiction. We don't actually want the one thing we should be aiming for, which is the end of suffering, and instead we actively run after the very things that cause it. It's like we're running away from real peace and straight into the arms of what causes us pain.
And here is the first crucial point. We have to know what the goal is. And the text is super precise here. Nirvana isn't just some vague, floaty idea. It's the permanent end of all the unstable, conditioned things that make up our experience of suffering.
Okay, so if the problem is that we're basically just confused, the solution has to start with wisdom, right? But the text says it's not just about learning stuff. It's about growing your insight in a very specific step-by-step way.
So the path of insight begins with a really simple observation. Everything changes. It all comes and goes. Now, once you really deeply get that, a second insight just naturally follows. If something is always changing, it can't give you lasting happiness. So, it's inherently a form of suffering. And from there, the third insight pops up. If everything is changing and unsatisfactory, then there can't be some solid, permanent me at the center of it all.
And this is absolutely key. This isn't some philosophical checklist of things to believe. What the text is describing is a psychological chain reaction. Seeing impermanence makes you realize suffering, and dealing with that suffering leads you to the insight of no self. Each step is built right on top of the last one.
So once that wisdom starts to really sink in, what happens? Well, it's not just an intellectual game. The text shows how this new way of seeing triggers this deep emotional and psychological shift. It really changes you from the inside out. As your wisdom gets deeper, your inner world starts to change. First, you get this feeling of revulsion, and I know that sounds really strong, but it's better to think of it as just being completely disenchanted, just being over the endless, unsatisfying cycle. And that disenchantment naturally leads to dispassion. Your cravings just kind of fade away, not because you're fighting them, but because you see through them. And that in turn frees you from the deep-seated mental junk and eventually leads to complete liberation. Okay, this brings us to the engine room of the whole path. How exactly does seeing the world differently lead to all these incredible results? The text says this is the motor that drives the whole thing.
The text just lays the causal link out so clearly. The power of wisdom isn't just a nice phrase. It's the actual engine. It's what directly kicks off this whole chain reaction. Wisdom creates that disenchantment. Working with that disenchantment leads to dispassion. And dispassion is what finally gets you to liberation. It's a straight-up cause and effect sequence.
So here you can see the two sides of the equation, right? On the one side, you've got the cause, this step-by-step unfolding of wisdom, seeing impermanence, suffering, no self. And on the other side, you've got the effect, the progression of freedom that just naturally follows, disenchantment, dispassion, and then liberation. Now, to make all this a little less abstract and a little more real, the text uses this fantastic metaphor. The journey to freedom is like a prisoner methodically planning and pulling off a prison break. So check this out. In this analogy, the actual chains are our own greed, hatred, and delusion. The prison guards, that's our own unhelpful ways of thinking that keep us locked up. And the little pleasures and comforts in our cell, those are what the text calls the 9 fetters. All the little attachments that make us think, you know what, this prison cell isn't so bad. And finally, the tormentors are the 4 maras, the hard realities of birth, aging, sickness, and death.
So, the point is, liberation isn't about just weakening one chain or trying to trick one guard. A real escape means you have to overcome the entire system. The chains inside you, the guards in your head, the temptations that keep you comfortable, and the threats outside. It has to be a complete breakout.
All right, so to wrap all this up, the text boils down the entire journey into 3 essential parts, or perfections, that you need for the path to be complete and to actually work.
So to bring it all together, a complete path needs 3 things. First, the perfection of practice, which basically means you gotta actually do the work. Second, the perfection of the fruit. The practice has to lead to a real, tangible result. And third, the perfection of the teacher. The whole path has to come from a reliable, trustworthy source.
You know, this path, laid out so long ago, is just incredibly logical. It moves like a proof, from a clear problem to a psychological chain reaction that leads to freedom. It makes you wonder, right? In a world that feels so chaotic, what can we learn from a framework that sees inner freedom not as some big mystery, but as a problem to be solved, step by logical step?